As the war in Ukraine grinds on, people in some parts of the country are already working to rebuild what the Russians have destroyed. But one of the biggest issues facing them is the threat posed by landmines. Ukraine's military estimates that a third of the country is contaminated by anti-personnel and anti-vehicle mines, as well as unexploded or abandoned ordnance. Experts say it will take years to clear such a vast area. Agricultural workers are especially affected. Ukraine was once one of the world's bread baskets, but now much of its fertile land is too dangerous to be used. DW's Max Tanda filed this report from the deoccupied territories of the Kharkiv region.
Oleg Girman should be dusting off tractors and sewing equipment, but he's got nothing left to work with. The Russians were here, and when they departed, they took everything with them.
Було дуже боляче. І потім, коли спілкувався зі своїми колегами, боляче. У деяких розбили ферми повністю. Хлопці розповідали, що отак от заходили, корова стоїть, вистрелили, вбили корову, відрізали ногу на шашлик.
Oleg had 30 people working here before the war, but since then his business lost €500,000. For a small company, that's devastating. It was a relief when the Russians withdrew from the Kharkiv region here, but they left a threat to the future buried in the ground.
Вот это их позиции были. Поэтому перед собой они все минировали. И вот это как раз мои все поля. Что на вот этих крайних полях можно только догадываться.
The ground Oleg should be plowing and planting is too dangerous to move heavy equipment on.
На мій погляд, це протитанкова міна. Лежала вона ось тут поруч. А ту, мабуть, була з якимсь сюрпризом.
The Kharkiv region is considered 100% contaminated by mines and unexploded ordnance. It's easy to find stuff. This is the tail of a missile. It contains the engine of a Russian Smersh. Who knows what's in the ground? No farming will take place on this soil until the place has been cleared by a professional demining team. And this is the situation for thousands of farmers in many parts of Ukraine at the beginning of the season. We are about to learn that some people are willing to take their chances. Yuri drove his tractor over a mine. He is lucky to be alive.
Сюди, ну тут більше, тут вже так нормально, а тут ще буде довго заживати. Там, я не знаю, ну, а така рвана рана. Желізних мало осколків, в основному пластик, резина. Зараз нормально. В перший день було невесело дуже.
Despite the danger, he says he will continue to work. And as he shows us, do his own demining. These are just a few of the things he found on the field.
Не я ж один, не я ж перший там чи як там. Наскільки я знаю, по Україні я не перший і не останній, це 100% підірвався.
In fields across the region, demining teams like this from the Halo Trust are doing what they can to prevent this from happening. They're finding many different dangers.
Anti-personnel mines with pressure plates, anti-personnel mine bonding fragmentation mines, grenades on tripwires. We are finding all sorts of cluster munition used in Ukraine, anti-vehicle mines in plastic and metal cases.
They estimate that 30 to 40% of Ukraine needs to be checked before being declared safe.
We have people that are not being able to walk on their own land, on their own yards, go for a picnic or walk freely because of the mines. On the other hand, they can't cultivate their land, and which is like the most cases the first source of income for the family. Other scenarios can be infrastructure areas that are, again, contaminated, just in Ukraine, we are seeing the number of accidents increasing.
No matter how long the war lasts, the danger of mines will last much longer. Farmer Oleg Girman has been waiting for help, but is now seriously considering trying to clear his fields himself. If he can't get the season started, he says, people will leave and never come back.
Earlier, we spoke to Jochen Flassbart, the German State Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. He's been tasked with helping to rebuild Ukraine by the German government. He told us how much of a problem landmines are for the reconstruction effort.
Yeah, it is definitely one of the big problems. Demining, therefore, is a priority for the Ukrainian government and also for the international community. It has been addressed by the International Coordination Platform, where I represent Germany. But unfortunately, it's only one of the priorities. There are many of those challenges, and just looking at the agriculture sector, beyond the demining, we are running risks that farmers, specifically smallholder farmers, leaving business and might not return due to mines, but also due to increased cost for inputs, for seeds, for fertilizers, and of course also for having difficulties to sell their products on the global markets.
Now, you're in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, to discuss rebuilding strategies right now. How are Ukrainian authorities approaching the issue, and what's Germany's role in helping the country recover?
Well, we are part of the international community. It was launched under the G7 presidency of Germany last December because we believe that the reconstruction has to be done strategically. We should avoid unnecessary doubling or tripling of efforts, where else we leave gaps, unfinanced gap in other areas. I think there are a number of strategic areas where the reconstruction needs to start already now. For example, in the energy sector, but also in the traffic and transport sector, in housing, for example.
Now, some say it's too early to work on rebuilding Ukraine when the country is still at war. Why are you starting now?
At the moment, we are fixing problems. Wherever the Russians destroy something, it is going to be fixed in the energy sector, in the housing sector, and we are providing support. But it's also psychologically a clear message to Ukraine, but also to Russia. Whatever Russia is bombing, we are on the side of Ukraine to fix it, already with a view to long-term reconstruction.
Now, Ukraine is aiming for EU membership. It's submitted an application, but it still has many obstacles, including a huge problem with corruption. Might that stop EU sources and others from investing in the country?
Yes, corruption is one of the big problems that has to be solved. It is luckily high on the agenda of the government, and I just spoke with parliamentarians also of the parliament. Corruption, if it is not stopped, might be a game stopper in the support by other countries because it is needed to build a robust and a mature democracy.
Mr. Flassbart, thank you very much for taking time to talk with us. That was Jochen Flassbart, State Secretary of the German federal government in charge of helping to rebuild Ukraine. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Michael Newton is a Ukraine expert at the Halo Trust, a charity that helps countries recover after war. He joins us from Salisbury. What impact have landmines had on the civilian population of Ukraine since this full-scale war broke out?
Good afternoon. Thanks very much for having me. I mean, the impact of landmines, I think, despite the scale of the contamination, which is the largest in Europe since World War II, I think the scale of that and even the impact has yet to be fully realised. We need to remember that this war is still ongoing. And as we heard from the last couple of reports, we know that Ukrainian GDP is down by 25%. Agricultural output is down by 30%. This isn't just a localized or regional problem. The war in Ukraine is having a global impact. And unfortunately, farmers like the ones we heard from are having to make a very difficult choice. It's either go out and plow their fields and risk their lives, to earn a livelihood, make a living, or don't, and then potentially lose that livelihood. And I've seen from very personal experience around in northern Ukraine, and we're seeing this all over, that that difficult choice that the farmers are having, it is taking a coin toss.
So what needs to be done
how many tractor X I've seen.
What needs to be done to make Ukrainian soil safe again?
So first and foremost, what needs to be done is a systematic, wide-scale process of establishing the extent of the contamination. Now, we've heard as much as 40% of Ukraine is contaminated, and I wouldn't say that 40% is contaminated, but I would say that 40% or up to 40% of Ukraine has been exposed to conflict. But what's important is to identify where that contamination really is through a process of widespread mapping. And we already have several hundred people on the ground. I've got 700 people in Ukraine. We're going to grow that to 1,200 by the end of this year. If you can identify the extent of the contamination, you can see where landmines are. You can equally see where they're not with a great degree of probability. And that's the first step to opening up agricultural land to be safely harvested.
And can you be more specific as to how long this threat of landmines could exist in Ukraine than just years?
Well, to give you an idea, prior to the full-scale invasion last year, we need to remember that this war didn't just start last year. This war has actually been going on for 8 years, since 2014. Back in 2021, we did a baseline assessment of the contamination in Donbass before the invasion. The contamination there was going to take us 20 years with the current levels of funding. So what we're looking at now, we need to remember that this war is still ongoing, and it could be for quite some time. We are looking at decades. This is an epochal, intergenerational problem.
And a huge job. I mean, you just ran through the numbers before. Have you got enough help? Have you got enough people on the ground trying to solve this problem for Ukrainians?
Not right now, no, we don't at all. We need to remember this war is still ongoing. So there is something of what we do need is continued levels of support. And we need to look at this. I think this is key. We need to look at this conflict and particularly the issues posed by landmines in a broader picture of recovery and reconstruction in Ukraine. The numbers that are being touted, we're looking at 411 billion euros for recovery and reconstruction, of which up to 40 billion euros has been earmarked for demining and clearing explosive hazards. Those are staggering numbers. And the Halo Trust is the world's largest humanitarian mine clearance organization. We are the largest in Ukraine, and we work alongside the Ukrainian government, the State Emergency Services Board. What's really needed is a long-term commitment to Ukraine, to demining, to see this through right to the very end.
You heard the scale of the problem there and the huge task at hand from Michael Newton from the Halo Trust. Thank you very much for your analysis and insight today.
Thank you.